Ready? Play.
Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, depending on where in the world you are tuning in from. I'm really pleased to have David Sammel, who is coach of Liam Broady, who is just below me, a little bit like Manchester City, just below Arsenal in the
Saving that
table.
one.
Yeah. Listen, Liam, let's talk about that for 30 to 60 seconds. What are you doing coming on here when you've got a match in 2 or 3 hours, which I'm sure has taken up most of your time? Was it affecting you on the court today as well?
Are you an Arsenal fan?
No,
Oh,
worse,
right.
Liam, worse.
Oh, right, okay, no. Well, we've got a few hours now, haven't we? I mean, it's 5 p.m. here. The game starts at about midnight, which is an absolute nightmare, to be honest. We decided I'm going to have a day off tomorrow because I've not had a day off since, obviously, last week in Lithuania. So this way I get to watch the first half of the game at least. But I'm absolutely knackered now, so we'll see how I feel in a couple hours' time anyway.
We've lost David. I think he's disinterested in talk about Arsenal, Man City. But as soon as he comes back, I'll bring him back in. Just quickly, what's your thought? Are you going to win?
I think I can't remember if we're away or at home. I think
Away.
we're going to draw one of the two, and I think we're going to win one of the two.
All right. I've seen you appear, I think, on MCFC TV. Is that right? In the past?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. All right. Well, lots to look forward to. It may end up being a title decider. It may not. But listen, talking of title deciders, do you like that segue, Liam? You had a title decider of your own last Sunday. Tell us, but actually, before we get into last week, I want to speak about your year. Until last week, Liam, it wasn't the best of weeks. We had Australia, of course. Tell us about Canberra, and then, of course, the qualifying.
Yeah. So I went to Canberra, which was, as usual, before in the run-up to a slam, was a very strong challenger. I was in the qualifying, despite being ranked about 170 at the time, I think, and played a couple guys within the top 250 in the first and second round of qualies, and then played a couple guys around 120 in the main draw before going down to a guy called Leandro Reedy in the quarterfinals, who's red hot at the moment. He's, I think, a prospect for the future. So Canberra went well, and then went to Melbourne and lost in the first round of qualifying to, I think he was number 4 seed in qualifying, Emilio Gomez. I lost 7-6 in the third, 10-7 in the third set breaker, which was... It was tough because obviously it was a close match against a good player, but having qualified last year, I had quite a few points coming off due to that. So it was a bit of a strange one, having won 4 or 5 matches in Canberra to then losing first round of qualies in Melbourne going home. I felt really deflated after that,
Yeah, I'm well aware of your results. I mean, David and I were chatting every sort of second day while you were in Australia, and it's such a long way to go. And also, as you said, we all know that you were in the first round last year because even the casual observer who's tuning into Netflix saw you there. Have you seen that episode, and how do you feel about that, by the way?
I watched the whole series with my family at home. I watched the first episode. I was quite happy with the part that I played in it. But I don't know. I found it really weird watching myself on a TV screen. I don't know if you find it watching back the videos from your podcast and stuff.
I'm used to it now, but at the beginning, yes.
I found it really weird and disconcerting. I didn't enjoy that part, but I was obviously proud to have been on the show at least.
Liam, do you watch some of your matches after they've happened? Do you
pretty much everyone?
And how does that feel, by the way?
I love it. I love watching it back because
Even defeats?
I find for myself as a player, I find the way things feel on the court can differ greatly to actually what it is on the court. So I find it really useful to watch matches back. I actually really very much prefer watching matches back that I've won because I like to have that positive reinforcement of, that's the way to play. That's the way to play.
We've jumped around a few topics. We've talked about Australia and Canberra and obviously the qualifyings there, but that wasn't the end of your disappointing start to the season, if you don't mind me. Liam, I'm talking about your expectations. I went to Koblenz 2 weeks ago, I think it was, and I had a nice chat with David there. But of course, the results didn't go great there either, did they?
No, so well, I had a good first round against a guy called Robin Harser. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm sure that a lot of people know that he was a very good player in his time. He's about 240 now. I managed to squeak through against Robin. I served for the first set, got broken serving for the first, won the first on a breaker, and then kind of ran away with it a bit in the second. And then I came up against a guy called Alexei Vatutin, who's a very tricky Davydenko-esque Russian player, ranked around 300, but I think he's been a fair bit higher. And I mean, he played well. I've got to admit, but I mean, I felt like it was probably one of my worst performances of the last few years, to be honest. And then that was kind of compounded by a doubles performance to match a few hours later. So it's an odd looking back, because that evening I was kind of sat in the hotel on my own, and I'm very aware I had like 150 points to drop off my ranking over the next month or two. And I was sat in the hotel, obviously having played so terribly, and I was thinking, I'm not sure if I drop back down the rankings again, if I'm going to be at the age of 29, if I'm going to have the energy to be able to push myself back up there. Which was quite a harrowing conversation to have with myself, because I've never really thought that way before. But it takes a lot of energy to drag yourself back up the rankings. And then obviously a week later, I won the biggest title of my career. So that's always a nice response.
Liam, that's really interesting how, obviously, you had a sticky time in Australia. You had a good result against Haas in Koblenz, but then you have that day, and I was there in Koblenz, at least for your singles match, where I saw you lost that match, and then of course you had the doubles as well. And it's funny that you say that you had that conversation with yourself, saying, I don't know, do I have the energy at this age to pick myself up again? And where did you summon the energy, therefore, and the confidence, if you like?
Yeah.
I mean, how did you feel when you arrived in Vilnius?
To be honest, if I look back over the course of my career, quite often my worst moments have preceded.
Yeah, immediately.
Have come before, like immediately before some of my best results or my best runs at tournaments. And I think it's sometimes just because I don't know whether it's a desperation or a kind of, it's not going to get any worse. It can only go one way. And then, so let's really, and I'm a big believer of, it doesn't, you can't be mentally tough until you have to respond to something that doesn't go your way. So I think you kind of have to see these setbacks sometimes as opportunities. So the Vatutin match for me kind of felt like, yeah, this is the worst I've felt for years, but how am I going to respond to this? Am I going to just, take it lying down, or am I going to get up and try and fix it? And actually, the next day we went out and did a couple of hours and had a really good session, which was just a complete contrast to what had happened in the match the day. It was actually kind of funny. I mean, at the end of that practice session the day after, I was like, I think we actually said, let's go and win Vilnius. Which was quite funny at the time to be saying that, but I was feeling well enough where I thought actually maybe that is a possibility, and then obviously got to Vilnius and felt great in the conditions, and then just progressed match after match.
David, let's see if we can just bring you in for a second here. You're sat there below and you're listening to everything that's being said. David, what were your thoughts? I mean, I remember speaking to you, I think, in a WhatsApp, like, what's your plans? When are you going to go to Vilnius? And you said, oh, we're on the practice court today in Koblenz, like after that pretty difficult day, obviously losing in the doubles quite painfully as well as the singles. And I was like, David, wow, you're back on the practice court in Koblenz as well. What was that? Do you think that was an important day? Tell me about the period between Koblenz and Vilnius.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm a strong believer that the best way to kind of get over a hangover is to go for a run. So the best way to get over a bad match is actually just to get back on court and start playing again. We did have a good conversation though before we had that practice, and I was absolutely delighted in how Liam responded to the conversation and came out there. Yeah, I mean, really in, I'd say, one of our better practices ever. And then from then on, as soon as we arrived in Vilnius, I kind of knew after the first practice in Vilnius that the tournament was on, because he was just so sharp on the ball. And, obviously winning a tournament is really, really difficult, but it's really nice to go into a tournament believing that, that there's a really good shot of winning it. And then, but I think nothing kind of can prepare you, or didn't, I felt, okay, he won his first round against a tricky opponent, Mats Morang, was it 1-3, and so, okay, that's great. And then he goes on and wins, 3-1 against Emer. And it just kind of rolls from there, where he's not just winning, but beating players, I will say this, comfortably in score, but there's so much energy and focus and taking care of business in order to get that score. And, Liam and I have spoken before, where I say, when you see a Roger Federer win really, really easily, trust me, there's so much work going in there to make it look easy. And I think certainly last week was not only his biggest win, but I mean, he came close to breaking the record for the least games lost in a challenger win. And that is another level of focus and application that I've obviously never seen from Liam before. And that means there's been a step forward right after a really poor performance. So it was a great week in many respects.
Liam, you are in Dubai right now, I believe. Tell us about your schedule for the next few weeks.
Yeah, so we obviously played the final in Vilnius on Sunday, and 4 a.m. the next morning we were leaving the hotel. Classic tennis life. We flew to Poland and then straight to Dubai. We arrived into Dubai, probably into the hotel about 6 p.m. Got a good night's sleep. We were on the practice court with Andy the next day. So hit with Andy on the Tuesday, and then today's Wednesday. We hit with a good junior player here. And then tomorrow afternoon we fly to Doha. We're going to sign in for Doha qualies. We're not sure if we're going to get in. Fingers crossed we do. The cut's dropped a little bit, but we'll have to see. And that'll be on Saturday. Hopefully, pick up where we left off from Vilnius and see what we can do. And then after that, it's a little bit chaotic. I'm going to go to Pune in India for a challenger. Okay. And then the week after that, I'm going to go to Lugano. Mm-hmm. And then after Lugano, there's a week's gap, and then Biel in Switzerland, and then we're pretty much straight onto the clay.
Wow, you are flying everywhere. But what about any North American swing thoughts, options, or?
We were thinking about it this year, but obviously, especially after Koblenz as well, we kind of had the discussion where, this year maybe it'd be better to play a few challenges and get a few matches. And then Vilnius happened, and we were like, oh no, I was going to swear then. Oh no, we're going to get in Miami. Is it worth going to Miami for one tournament? But that's the last minute nature of the tennis tour when you're, at this sort of ranking between 100 and 200. And we kind of took an executive decision and decided, maybe it's better to play a couple more challenges and hopefully get close enough to, main draw of slams within a few months and push on from there.
But you are certainly flying all over with India on the horizon, then coming back to Europe. And then, Liam, how do you feel about the clay? I mean, most casual tennis observers will be aware of, making the first round in Australia a year or so ago, where you played Kyrgios, of course, and beating Schwartzman en route to the third round at Wimbledon. But how are you on the clay? How do you feel there?
I actually was speaking to someone today about that. I said it's funny because I always saw the clay as my worst surface, but the French Open was the first slam that I qualified for, which kind of reopened my eyes to it. And, I had a few good wins on the clay in the run-up to the qualifying, and then obviously played some tough... I mean, I played Botic, Van der Zandsloop in the qualies there. There were some good matches, and I think the way that I've been playing this past week or two, I've been getting a hell of a lot of shape and spin on my forehand, and you know, we already know that lefties with good shape on the forehand can do well on the clay. So
Yeah.
I'm feeling pretty good about the clay this year. I feel better than last year, that's for sure.
Liam, I know your time is precious, especially with the big game coming up tonight. But I do have a couple more questions, and they're generic ones actually. Now, would you rather, Liam? And I don't know if David will have the same answer to this question, but would you rather going into a slam? Let's say you make the first round, whether it be at the French or elsewhere. Would you rather have? Would you rather play Rafa Nadal or Novak Djokovic, or somebody that would be arguably, Liam, if you don't mind me saying, more beatable? Which of those two? It's the Thursday before slam. You've unbelievably. Let's say it's Philip Chatrier, for example.
I mean, I don't even need to think. I'd rather play someone who's more beatable. I think.
Okay.
I think anyone that's played somebody of that level knows that it's not very enjoyable, and you'd prefer to play them in the second or third round than the first round.
Yeah, got it. So would you so you'd probably be okay with seeing sort of Rafa looming in rounds 2 or 3 potentially?
I mean, if I could play Rafa in the final, that'd be the best option. The later into the tournament I could play them, the better, really. I mean, I played Andy first round of Wimbledon in 2016, which was the year he finished number 1.
Yeah.
And I was defending 45 points, so I wasn't very happy with it then either.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But Liam, as far as I'm aware, you've never played Novak or Rafa, right?
I never have. Hopefully never will.
Really? Is that how you feel?
I've practiced with them both. I don't need to play them in a match. Hope maybe I'll play them in a match when I'm feeling confident and on a wave of momentum and catch them cold somewhere.
What about a 38-year-old Rafa with one knee and one arm on
That's
centre
true.
court, maybe?
Take his left arm off him and then we'll talk.
Yeah, exactly. Final question, Liam. Do you have any superstitions, pre-match or even pre-tournament or just in general?
Yeah, I have a lot. I mean, some of them are just kind of habits. Some are superstitions. I mean, on the court, not many. I'm not sure many people. Dave might not even know, but I don't step on lines on the court.
As a kid, I used to do the same.
Yeah, so I mean, obviously being raised on the step on a crack, break your mum's back.
Okay.
On pavement, I remember years ago I was on a date and a girl said, "What are you doing?" Walking down the road in England. She said, "You're avoiding the cracks, aren't you?" And I was like, "Yeah, I am." And she said, "If you keep doing that, you're never going to get a girlfriend."
How did that date turn out?
Not very well. So I mean, I was obviously staggering my steps so much that even she noticed. But I do that on the tennis court around the lines.
Okay.
So I'd say that's probably my biggest one. I mean, sometimes I get superstitious thoughts in my head. So like before the finals last week, I'd run out of my white and black kit that I'd worn for the whole week.
Yeah.
So I had to change to another kit. And obviously, again, it's kind of a superstition, kind of just want to keep the winning formula the same, which I guess is kind of a habit as well, right? And I was thinking, oh my gosh, is this going to make a difference? And I kind of shooed it away in my head. I thought, well, you don't have a choice. Just, get over it and get on with it. And obviously that is a superstition. But I also do mindfulness before every match. But
that's
again,
why you didn't break the record.
Yeah, there you go. But I also do mindfulness before every match, which I'm not sure is as much a superstition as it is, a routine to go through before a match.
When you say mindfulness, what do you mean, Liam?
So I have like an app called Calm, which basically 15 minutes a day before a match, I'll just go through like a bit of like a meditation sort of thing, deep breathing, bit of visualization. And if I don't do that, I don't really tend to feel right on the court. I don't really do it before practice, but for a match, I kind of feel like I need to do that.
All right, Liam, listen, we've had 20 minutes of your time, and I'm really appreciative of that. Hopefully, David is going to stay on for a couple more minutes, and we can just have a sort of end chat. But Liam, listen, you can sail off into the Dubai sunset and maybe enjoy this evening's game, especially as you've got a day off tomorrow. Thanks, Coach, for giving him a day off tomorrow, by the way.
Yeah, exactly.
Cheers, Liam. You can just leave or you can hang on, but it doesn't really matter. But thanks very much, Liam.
See you later,
Cheers.
guys.
David, any thoughts?
Yeah.
Did you know about his superstition, by the way, about the lines?
Yes. Yeah, I did. Yes.
Okay.
I've been with him nearly 10 years. I think I know pretty much everything.
I would have thought so, yeah.
Yeah,
Listen, any
yeah.
thoughts on some of the things that Liam and I just spoke about? You know, the mood in the first sort of 4 weeks of the year compared to, say, what happened in Vilnius?
To be honest, I thought, Australia had the potential to go really well. I think losing that first round qualies was a blow, because he did get in a position to win that match and wasn't able to get over the line. So losing 7-6 in the third is never fun, at a slam. But then we got back and in Koblenz, I knew he was very nervous, and I thought the ranking was something that was bothering him. I think we spoke about that.
Yeah.
But the performance against Vatutin was, very poor, as we've spoken about. And I mean, one of the things we just spoke about is just being a bit more meticulous on court. He's very meticulous about everything and the way he prepares and everything like that. And I said, that's your personality. Why don't you use that strength on the court and just be a little bit more meticulous with, things like footwork and watching the ball and just the focus on court. And, it was, a very good conversation. I think I said my piece. And the reaction was just tremendous. I mean, the very next practice, as I said. So I would say that, that poor performance may have been the best performance of the year, because if he continues in the vein in terms of how focused he was in Vilnius, especially in things like break points and stuff like that, really zoning in and doing everything possible to make them play. And if he can carry on like that, then it was a real blessing in disguise, because I think, I just saw a different level of focus that I've not seen before.
That's
And he's been really good for 2 years. I mean, you don't beat people like Nurkats and Schwartzman and Tiafoe, and
Cam Norrie as
if
well,
you don't
I think,
have
right?
good, not in the last 2 years, but
Okay.
he has beaten Norrie before twice. You don't win those kind of matches if you don't have a good focus. But there was definitely always another level that I felt needed to be there to increase the consistency, and that's what I'm hopeful for now, that the consistency will be there. That's really what's prevented him from being in the top 100 and beyond.
Yeah, because his ranking right now, I believe, is 140.
Yeah.
The sort of golden line of being in the top 100 is obviously something very much on your minds. It was there at the beginning of the year, but with the setbacks you had in Australia and to a lesser extent in Germany, that question mark. But then suddenly winning now, he's up to 140. Are you looking up again now rather than looking down?
I mean, I think I've always looked up. I never bothered to look down. I just think that it's always about, playing the right way and sticking to your processes and working hard to get better all the time. And I think by and large, Liam has done that, especially the last 2 years. But having lost early in Australia, the pressure of losing points and dropping back outside the top 200 was looming large. And I think that contributed to the performance in Koblenz. But I think I was able to turn his head again to look what is possible if you do things just a little bit better again, and really, really, be pedantic about your, the way you focus on the court, that, you can turn this around quickly. And I mean, like I said, from the first practice in Vilnius, I thought, plays like this, there's there's a chance here of doing really well. But I was nervous going into the first round because you never know what's going to actually happen. Once he got through that, I was very nervous about the Emer match because I know he can play very, very well. But Liam was, started very well there, and Emer, was, I think, stunned a little bit and didn't really get to the races until the second set. And it was a sticky moment. I think it was a 4-3 Liam upper break. And it felt a little bit sticky, but Liam managed to get through that and then broke him again for the match. Jumzo is always difficult. He's a great mover. He closes the net off really fast. He's got very good touch around the net. So again, that was also 1-3. But that second set, that 6-3 set, was a real battle. It was, and again at 4-3 there, it was a really important game to hold, and then to break again. So yeah. I mean, I think if he can continue with that, it could be a very good year.
What is for the Doha qualification, the Qatar Open qualification on the ATP side? What are we looking at for the cutoff for qualifiers there? So he's ranked 140 at the moment.
Yeah, but the thing is, it's on his previous ranking of 178.
Ah, okay.
So
I see, because they're lagging by a week behind or something, aren't they?
Yeah. So right now the cut is 153. So he needs 3 or 4 more guys to drop off. If he doesn't get in, he will be first alternate, because the first alternate goes on your current ranking.
Okay.
But then you need somebody to kind of drop out overnight, or not show up, which is a little trickier. And you are, it's a bit of a real Hail Mary hope. You're not. There's not a great chance of getting in.
Got it.
But previous years suggest you'll get in. The cuts from previous years have always been about, 157, 177. So he's still got a chance.
By the way, David, when do you have the same answer as Liam regarding, playing the first round against Novak or Rafa? Would you say the same? I'd rather play them later on in the tournament, or for you, you'd like to have the challenge, or to see how that goes, or what are your thoughts on that question?
I mean, I agree that I think if you can play, somebody that's, a chance to win and start to get some momentum in a tournament before you play a big player, it is helpful. I think you feel more comfortable in the tournament when you've won 1, 2, maybe 3 matches.
But wouldn't Rafa and Novak feel the same?
They would feel exactly the same, yes. But I think, if you play them first round, yes, they're going to be more nervous. They're probably not going to play as well, but neither are you.
Yeah.
And so I think, look, I mean, those guys, I think Liam needs to be a little closer to them to feel comfortable to say, listen, I really would like to have a go first round. I think while you still need the points, it's a tougher decision. I think if you main draw of every slam, then say, okay, let me have a go. But certainly personally, I would love to have a go at one of those guys and see. But again, only if he's in the mindset that he really goes out there to believe he can win.
Got
I mean, I've been in that situation with Miles McLagan. We've spoken about against Boris Becker, and
Yeah.
Guys against Sampras and stuff like that, where I really think I was able to get them to the state of mind where they really believed they could win.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a huge difference when you go out on the court to actually genuinely believe you can win.
Yeah.
And that you only start to know as you get closer to a match like that whether the player is actually there for it or not.
Yeah, I mean, if he was to say have a good 3 or 4 months, if he's in the top 100, first round of Wimbledon as well, then and the confidence is flowing, and you can catch these guys cold. I mean, I remember Leighton Hewitt, albeit Karlovic ended up being a pretty tricky phenomenon in a way, but I remember that match at Wimbledon and Draper taking a set off Novak last year, and other players taking a set off Novak, for example, early on in a tournament.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, I think in terms of the way they're going to perform, the first round is the best time to get them.
Yeah.
Because they are going to get better and better as the tournament goes on, if they're feeling it, which is mostly. But yeah, as I said, it's also really difficult to come into a match like that if you don't really feel like you're in a place to really go after them for a win and feel that confident that, hey, I can do something here. And I do believe that that's slightly ranking related. That if you know you're going to be in all the slams, it's not like just because the points are huge, money's good. It's a chance to really do something in a slam. So to hit those guys first round, it does take that away from you.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I hadn't thought of that, of course, and it just goes to show that for the people that are ranked, sort of as you say, between the 1 and 200 mark, where the ambitions are still pretty big, if you like, of getting into the top 100 and getting into main draws. That of course, you come up against one of those, suddenly you're not going to. I mean, for example, of course, Wimbledon last year didn't have any.
It's a 0-pointer. You lose first round of a slam, it's a 0-pointer.
Yeah,
that means you're only counting 17 tournaments, not 18, and because one of them's a 0, you can't replace it with anything else. So it's quite a big deal to get a 0-pointer as well. So it's the ranking effect is not good for a player in that area.
Sure. David, one final thing then on the ranking thing. Does the fact that Wimbledon didn't have points last year, is that something that annoyed you, if you like, or bothered you before the tournament? Let's say bothered rather than annoyed. Was it like, oh, this is a tournament where we think Liam can get some points and there's not going to be any? And are you keen to have points this year at Wimbledon?
Very keen. I just don't think, whilst Wimbledon's Wimbledon, so everybody will play it. I do think over time, if there's no points there, because I think this war could go on for 2, 3, 4 years. And if you're not going to have points every year for Wimbledon, I do believe that in that situation, it starts to devalue the tournament.
Yeah.
And I can't see that being something that can carry on. Before the tournament when they took it away, I was irritated by it because I felt that it did punish a lot of players, and the ATP is the Association of Tennis Professionals. I mean, it's kind of for the players, and I know the ATP had to do something, but maybe in the first year, just the heavy fines, but also know where they're coming from, because that does obviously, take away from one of the founding principles, which is players are individuals and have the right to play. So it is a tricky situation. I mean, the decision that Wimbledon took, I felt was not not the right decision. But we're going to have the same thing with the Olympics, it seems like now. With
It does look that way, yeah.
you know, but I just think, you know, it's where do you draw the line, you know what I mean? And I think once you start playing the kind of moral police in sport, it's a really tricky line to draw. Because where do you draw the line? I mean, because things are going to happen in the world, and governments are going to do things in the world that have nothing to do with the people.
Mm-hmm.
And if you start saying, well, because this government's done this, these players can't play, I just think it's a slippery slope to a bad situation, because you are starting to play, you know, in my view, moral police as to what's right and what's wrong, and you know, wars can break out anywhere. You know, governments can make, you know, and I experienced this myself as a player, because coming from South Africa, there were a lot of places where I couldn't play, and it made my tournament schedule much more difficult, and you know, I wasn't able to go to, you know, starting off in, you know, in the satellites in those days, to some of the countries where there were slightly weaker satellites, to get the ball rolling and get a, you know, a lot of points in slightly weaker situations, to then attack the countries where the tournaments were a lot tougher. I was pretty much confined to where the tournaments were very tough. You know, Asia was out. You know, Scandinavia was out. You know, most of well, all of Africa pretty much was out. You know, a lot of the Middle East was out. So, you know, I had a very small amount of countries in which to play in. And, you know, I remember being in Holland, where people started throwing black tennis balls on the court, and protesting. And I thought I was being clever, and I asked the umpire if I could take the microphone, and I did, and I said, you know, could anybody here watching step onto the court who chose where they were born?
What was the reaction?
And well, I thought that would make them think, but they just went bananas. I mean, you know, just asking. But I mean, they were very good. The security came and police came and got them out of there. But you know, and I still believe that to this day. I mean, you know, the Russian players didn't choose to be born in Russia. You know, the Ukrainians didn't choose to be born in Ukraine. You are where you're from, and I think as an individual sport, you have to be free to play where you can, wherever you know, where sport is. Otherwise, again, it's a moral judgment made by, you know, other people, which is, you know, it's a tough judgment to make, because it's not a choice.
Listen, we've got this next few weeks. You've already mapped out some of the schedule there. The clay court season as well is something to look forward to. I always like it because I'm based in Europe, so it's nice, because the clay court season means that summer's on the way, if you like, or at least it's beginning, really. How optimistic are you about the rest of the year?
I'm very optimistic right now. Yeah, very optimistic. Yeah, I think we took a good step forward in Vilnius, and if you can hold on to that, I think it's going to be a good year.
Fingers crossed, David, it turns out that way. Thank you very much for joining us today, both you and Liam. It was great to hear his thoughts as well on the last sort of few weeks in particular, but also what might be coming up. And I will play us out with this very, very short reminder to let you all know that you need to like and subscribe this video to keep up to date with all things tennis. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you hit that like button. Don't forget to subscribe and click that notification bell so you don't miss out on all things tennis.